Willie D Live.
What's up, family? The Indian journalist who revealed the location of Benjamin Netanyahu's home after it was attacked by Iranian missiles has been arrested. And he has not been seen since his arrest, reportedly. Fam, that's a big problem because the man was just doing his job. And I'm going to say this, fam. I was surprised that an Indian journalist was out there covering things. But man, thank you for your attention to this matter. I ain't got no problem with that, man. Yeah, fam. Here's the journalist covering the house right after it was destroyed. I mean, decimated.
Now, in one of the locations that was attacked, you can see just behind me Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has visited this place. This is one of the locations where a deadly attack took place. 9 people were killed, and there were, in fact, more than 25 who were injured out here. You can see Netanyahu, in fact, visiting this particular location out here. And this is the latest that we are picking up in Bet Shemshesh, where, in fact...
Now, allegedly, that home and several others in the close proximity to that home was owned by Pakistanians. And Israel came through and just took over the homes. And Netanyahu claimed one for himself, allegedly, him and his family members, allegedly. Fam, I'm going to tell you something. That journalistic work is serious. I'm talking about the boots on the ground journalistic stuff. You know, all of it is serious, but when you start talking about getting on that ground, going to a site where war is happening, where like bombs are dropping. I'm not even talking about gunfire. You know, you can duck and dodge gunfire, get out of the way. I'm talking about where they can drop something in the vicinity of where you are and wipe out everything within a mile in some situations. Fam, yeah, this is serious. So this guy's family obviously is concerned about him. People are saying that Israel is dead wrong for locking this guy up. He only did what he's supposed to do. That's what journalists do. And if you want people to believe you, you have to allow honest journalism to take place. When you start locking up journalists, it makes it seem like you're trying to hide something. Such is the case when the United States DOJ decided to investigate Don Lemon and subsequently lock him up for filming and interviewing during a protest at a church in Minnesota. So Don was actually arrested, and I'm not sure how the case was resolved. I'm not sure if the charges were dropped. I think the charges were dropped. But in any event, it's just a bad look. And for a long time, the United States was the country that championed freedom of speech. No matter what, freedom of speech. No matter what, freedom of speech, which extended to the freedom of the press, right? But here's the thing. The press, the U.S. press has always been in collusion with the government. The government has always influenced what the media writes. Sometimes the media, especially independent media, will say things that are totally opposite of what the government would like the people to know. So every now and then, those type of articles get out. Well, they get out a lot compared to mainstream media, who is mainly bought and sold, is paid for. They're absolutely in collusion with the government and always have been. That's why, remember, like if you can go, you can kind of Google this, I think. Wait, not think, but you can Google this. You can Google old news articles of Black people where if they were looking for a Black person, they would take a picture of the Black person and they would make them buck their eyes, have their eyes bucked, right? So and make them, let's say a man was wanted and they would say he was wanted for murder or raping somebody, right? Which was oftentimes a lie, right? So what they would do is they would capture a Black man and then they would take a picture of him. And then they would make him buck his eyes and then look grimacing. And then they'll say, look menacing. And then they would say, and then they would also make the picture darker, you know, and then they put it out there to just terrorize people, you know, scare the white folks, you know, like, and with that, it would enrage white men, you know, primarily the uncivilized ones who was just looking for a reason to harm Black bodies. And they would just go crazy. They would just see something like that and then go start killing. But that's after they would capture somebody that they were possibly looking for. But before they would capture them, they would do a sketch. And the sketch was always menacing, man. It was menacing. And the eyes were almost always bucked. And that was to, you know, make them look intimidating, to cause fear and terror, right? This is the move. So the media is the main ones to blame for America's image around the world as the peacemakers, right? The peacemakers, the liberators. But they're also the main reasons for Black people's image around the world. So that's why when you have some people come to the United States, they have low expectations of Black people because of what they read and what they heard through US media. Remember, it's coming from US media. So if the US media is saying this, well, you know, they're out there with them. It must be true. Think about it. If we see something coming from media and Tel Aviv, or we see something coming from, you know, Sky News or whatever, or some outlet like Daily Mail in the UK, we think is more credible because they're boots on the ground. They're right there in that country covering the news. So we tend to give it more credence. Any statements they make, we tend to give it more credence. So it's the same thing with how the US tainted Black people's image around the world. You know, obviously nobody's perfect, but what they have done, what they managed to do is to use our worst as an example of who we are collectively and use their best as an example of who they are collectively. So, you know, to go after the media like this, that's a bad look. It tells people, whether even if it's not true, it makes people think that you have something to hide. But what say you, fam? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. No more talk.